It's Wednesday. You all know what that means. It's time for another episode of the Life in the Movies podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Ryan Cam. Thank you so much for tuning in. This week, we're going to be going back to the Disney well and reviewing an article from Collider called "The 10 Worst Walt Disney Animated Movies of All Time," ranked according to IMDb. So that's going to be a very interesting read. And we'll also be discussing Iron Fist Season 1, Episode 12. Jacob, we're almost done. We are free. We are almost free.
Yeah, we're getting close. One more episode and we'll take an Iron Fist break, but we gotta still sludge through season two though.
Yeah, but we've got the Defenders coming up, and I have heard good things, so hopefully that is as good as advertised. But Jacob, I hope that you are doing well. I know you were talking about taking a break, but you're still jumping on to co-host this podcast with me, which I am truly grateful for, and I hope that you're doing well.
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm Yeah, it is a bit of a struggle because of some personal issues, but I'm taking it one day at a time, and yeah, there's still a little bit of sadness from it, but I should be okay, and I'm thankful that I think I'm doing a little bit better about it, and yeah, we'll just see where it goes from here.
Yeah, absolutely. But I really am grateful to have you on as my co-host, and it's so happy to have you on. I wanted to read a Bible verse that I found to you. It's like you're usually the spiritual advisor of this show. I'm going to read one to you from Jennifer Hudson. Sometimes God makes better choices for us than we could have ever made for ourselves. So I leave you with
Yeah,
that wisdom.
I appreciate that.
But yeah, before we dive into Iron Fist coverage, is there anything that you've been watching lately?
I didn't watch much because of what was going on last week. I think the only thing I've watched since the last episode, to be honest, is that Iron Fist episode.
Oh, well, fair enough. At least you're prepared to talk about it because I'm actually glad you did because, to be quite honest, I think it's one of the better episodes, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But as I guess for me, I watched quite a bit. So I have officially caught up to Saw the final chapter. I have watched Saw 5, 6, and 7. I believe I talked about that last week, and I believe I did. I haven't logged these on my letterboxd yet, so I am a little lazy on that, but I have watched quite a bit. I watched the 12 Chairs because I'm trying to catch up on Mel Brooks's movies because I've only seen the famous ones. I watched The Producers a little bit ago. I really enjoyed it. 12 Chairs, not so much. I don't think it's a bad movie per se, but it's one of those movies you would never guess that Mel Brooks directed until it like comes up and like 12 Chairs. What was that? And like, oh, Mel Brooks directed that. Oh yeah, he did. And it's not a parody of any kind. It's like an original story. I mean, I guess he's parodying Soviet Russia, sort of, kind of, but it's about these people looking for these jewels, and I don't know. I just didn't get into it. I'm not saying that Mel Brooks only has one speed parody. I mean, the dude is like one of the best comedy writers of all time. Personally, I believe that. But I don't know. I couldn't get behind this one. Jacob, you've seen this before, right? Like, am I crazy?
I've seen the 12 Chairs once. It's been quite a few years since I've last seen it, but I don't remember getting much out of it either. Like, I hardly remembered it. And it's probably like people hype it up as a funny film, but I thought it was his least memorable.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to some of the performances. I thought they were pretty good. You got Frank Langella as Ostap. You got Dom DeLuise as Father Fyodor. Honestly, he made me laugh the most out of anyone here. But I mean, it's Dom DeLuise. I mean, the dude was just naturally funny at pretty much everything he did. Ron Moody was good too. I don't know. This is just a weird little this is just a weird little anomaly in Mel Brooks's filmography.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely not one of his strongest efforts, but at least his next two films, he bounced back greatly with Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, which came out the same year.
Yeah, those are two genuine comedy classics right there. So, I mean, even the best have a hiccup every now and again. It's just how it works. But continuing my Disney canon watch, I watched for the first time ever Alice in Wonderland, the OG Alice in Wonderland, because I've only seen the Burton movies. I know that's a mistake, and that's on me. Those movies are terrible. This original Alice in Wonderland movie is great. The plot is I don't want to say there is no plot because I believe there is, but it's kind of loose at best. It's basically Alice falling down the rabbit hole into Wonderland and basically reacting to all of the craziness around her. Mad Hatter, the Tea Party, the Queen of Hearts, so on and so forth. But honestly, the animation in this movie was just so stellar that I didn't care if there was a plot because the movie just looks so beautiful. It was released in 1951. I've seen worse looking movies today. So the 51 animation just still holds up tremendously well. Uh, I I love the characters in this movie so much, especially the Queen of Hearts. I loved her so much and her temper and just like the like off with her head and silence. It's just her tantrums just out of nowhere. I just loved it so much. And Alice, I loved her. So yeah, this is just it's just a fantastic movie, and I think it's aged tremendously well.
Yeah, I'm glad you really enjoyed Alice in Wonderland. It's one that it took me quite a bit to get into it because it was always an okay Disney movie when I was a kid. It was never one of my favorites. But now I think this movie's amazing. Like I enjoy the just how bonkers the movie actually is. And people say this movie's terrible because it's all nonsense, but that's what this movie is about. The whole
Yeah,
movie is
that,
nonsense. That's what
that's
Wonderland is. And
that's the point, guys. It's
yeah,
literally Alice going into this crazy place and getting frustrated and confused by everything that's going on. That is the point. So I don't know
yeah, exactly.
what all went
And
on
that's
in
what
her
and that's what the Tim Burton films fell so flat on because they tried doing the generic chosen one story, and yeah, that doesn't work with a movie that's supposed to be a world of no rules and it's all nonsense and no logic.
For some strange freaking reason, I found Helena Bonham Carter's Queen of Hearts infinitely less interesting than the one in the 51 version, but that's just me. But
Yeah.
yeah, original Alice in Wonderland. Watch it if you haven't. It's really good. For my big Scary Mania series, I'm starting to prepare for that by watching a lot of horror movies. So a lot of horror movies on the docket coming up. I'm three deep now into my 31. I've watched A Page of Madness, which is a really old antique Japanese silent horror movie. The Unknown, directed by Dracula director Todd Browning, and starring, before he was famous, Lon Chaney Sr., who would go on to be known as the Man of a Thousand Faces, play the Phantom of the Opera in the original Phantom of the Opera movie, not the musical. His son, Lon Chaney Jr., would be the Wolfman in the Universal Monster series. And it also starred a before she was famous Joan Crawford as the main love interest. So a lot of talent going on there. And then I watched The Man Who Laughs, which was the direct inspiration for a character called the Joker. You all may have heard of him. It's directed by Paul Lenny, directed by Paul Lenny, produced by Carl Laemmle, who would go on to direct pretty much all of the Universal monster slate from the late 20s up to the early to mid 40s. He would produce all of them. It starred Conrad Veidt, who was the monster in Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and he was the main general, the main Nazi general in Casablanca. So he had a long career. And Man Who Laughs was the direct inspiration for the Joker because his face has been carved into a permanent smile like that. Even when he's crying, he's smiling. And it's basically like the song states, I started a joke, but the whole world laughed. it's which started the whole world crying if I could only see that the joke was on me. That's basically the main conceit of the movie. And it's not necessarily a scary movie, it's more of a tragic movie because this guy goes through so much and you feel really sorry for him. And Conrad Veidt being a silent movie, he just puts the legwork in, and it really is tremendous. The movie is on YouTube. Just the look up The Man Who Laughs and you will find it. I don't know how Universal has not snapped it up yet because it is a Universal horror movie, but maybe they just let it fall into the public domain. Who knows? But I actually just remembered I watched one more. It was The Old Dark House, and this is a rewatch for me, but I've always loved this movie. It starred Boris Karloff outside of Frankenstein, directed by James Whale, who directed Boris Karloff in Frankenstein. The movie's basically a movie about these travelers who get stuck in a monsoon and they come across the first house they see, which is the Femme house. And they're not good people, let's just say that. It's a house full of secrets and it is incredibly dangerous. Boris Karloff plays a mangled servant named Morgan, who is basically Frankenstein without the makeup. It's kind of sad because he's really good in the movie, but it's also sad because Karloff is such a good speaker that he was only labeled as monsters like Frankenstein and so on and so forth. It's kind of sad, but I mean, he was good at it, so there is that. The movie also starred Ernest Thesiger, who would go on to be Dr. Pretorius in Bride of Frankenstein, which came out a couple of years after this, also directed by James Whale, and starred Charles Laughton, who would go on to be Dr. Moreau in the Island of the Lost Souls movie from Universal. So a lot of talent involved in this. It's kind of a play on, like, say, for a recent example, Bodies, 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 where it's just people stuck in a house in a storm, and just the claustrophobia and just the tension sets in, and you're just stuck with these people and you can't leave. So it's really well done, and it's one that I highly recommend. And then that's going to be a part of Scary Mania 4. I know that's a lot of movies that I just threw out at everybody. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I can't comment on any of those. I haven't seen any of them. I've only heard of the old Dark House, but I've not heard of the other ones. The
Yeah.
Man Who Laughs one sounds interesting though.
I definitely recommend that one of the four because the other three are good, but Old Dark House is really something special. I do give that one big thumbs up and a hearty recommendation. But man, like my viewing habits have been all over the place. It's like Smallville, horror, Saw, Disney, 2010. I'm just like darting all over the place. I just can't seem to settle down on one thing. But I pass it off to all of you. What have you all been watching lately? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to read what you have to say. So, well, Jacob, let us, before we dive into Iron Fist Season 1, Episode 12, just an announcement. Next week is the September preview, and we will be live for that. And that means the end of Iron Fist coverage. We will have reached the season finale of Iron Fist Season 1, and it's going to be a happy day indeed. But that's going to be live on the channel this coming Wednesday, not this Wednesday, but the next Wednesday, the 30th. So be sure to check that out when it goes live. But let us now get into Iron Fist Season 1, Episode 12, called Bar the Big Boss. Ward receives an offer with strings attached. DeVos advocates for an extreme solution, and a deadly duel gets personal. So I said at the beginning of this that this was one of the better episodes, and I will stand by that. It's not a particularly great episode. It's still confused between the Iron Fist and Hand stuff and the Meachums and their drama that we just collectively just don't care about. But quite honestly, I was kind of into the battles. At least I thought those were kind of fun. I didn't want to wait through 12 episodes of nothing to get to this point. Feel like this could have been a movie, but I think in general it was still mostly good. It held my attention. Jacob, what say you?
Um, I would agree kind of to an extent. It did hold my attention, but I can't necessarily say it was a good episode either. I still do not care for the Meachums. I'm past caring for the Meachums. I still don't know what they're doing with those characters because in past episodes they've alluded to that bringing Harold back from the dead was a terrible idea, and he's a more psychotic version of what came before, but you still want to feel sympathy for him at the same time. I don't know what they're going with that, and I don't really care by the end of the day. Even the whole friction with Danny Rand and Devos, I don't care more in the slightest, only because he was a character introduced late in the game. I think if you would, like we talked about in past episodes, if half of this show was centered around Danny's training, the friendship with DeVos, and then the rivalry that ensued because DeVos wanted the Iron Fist mantle and Danny got it instead, the drama would be more earned and it'd be very compelling. But because we didn't get that, it comes off as forced, rushed, and unearned. I don't even care for Bakudo as a villain either. I think he sucks, honestly, compared to Madame Gao, who was more interesting. But I will admit the action is well done. Like, if anything, the one thing that holds my attention is the action and the fight choreography. And to be honest, I'm just ready for Iron Fist to end. I'm tired talking about it. If I feel disinterested in talking about it, it's only because this show has tried my patience.
Yeah, it's tried all of our collective patience, but yeah. Uh the one connecting thread throughout all of these shows that we've covered is that the action has just been stellar. Like there has not been a bad action sequence. Maybe I unless I'm forgetting something, unless I'm forgetting something, I don't think there's been a bad action sequence in all across all of these shows. Whoever's the fight coordinator, they should have gotten a raise.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think all the shows, at least, delivered in the stunt department. Now, I think some shows did it better, like Daredevil, but even Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and even the worst episodes of Iron Fist, whenever action takes place, they were at least well choreographed.
Yeah, that's for sure. And Jessica Jones definitely had some moments where we're like, come on, guys, what are we doing? But at least those sequences were fun and there was tension. This show has like next to nothing. It's just three different stories smashed together and just be like this the showrunners of this are literally holding up hastily drawn like crayon drawings. They're like, is this something? Is this something? And it's like, no, no, it's not.
Yeah, it's such a frustrating watch. And at least this one did help hold our attention, but I still wasn't that crazy about it.
Yeah, but we got one episode left, and I'm looking for. I think we'll have to like get like a cake or something because we made it. You know, like you get a cake, like I'll get like a small cake, and we'll just like do the thing like we made it. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be exciting, even if it's virtual.
That's for sure. But I pass it off to all of you. What did you think of episode 12? Let us know in the comments. Love to read what you have to say. Well, it's time for the main event. And this is an article that I found online, and I found it quite interesting. 10 worst Walt Disney animated movies of all time, ranked according to IMDb. And this is coming from the fine folks at collider.com. And Jacob, you have not read this. I have. So I'm going to be passing these on to you for the first time. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, starting off the list at number 10, Pocahontas, rating 6.7 out of 10. Pocahontas is an animated film based on the life of a Native American woman who lived in the 17th century. Pocahontas is portrayed as an independent, strong young woman divided by her devotion to her tribe and her love of the Englishman John Smith. I wholeheartedly disagree with this. I can see why people would complain like about a movie like this, but honestly, I've always enjoyed this movie. I mean, at least the songs are good. Like Colors of the Wind is iconic. Like If I Never Knew You, that's a really good song too. And the Savages song, that still gets my blood pumping. But Mel Gibson as John Smith is a good choice. So, yeah, definitely not the worst. Like not the best, but not the worst.
Yeah, I disagree as well. I would not put it in my bottom 10 from Disney animation. Yeah, the movie has flaws, and I get why people would not like the movie. If you're turned off by the historical inaccuracies, the film doesn't work for you. But if you take the film at face value, I think it's a pretty good movie. Beautiful animation, great songs, and it still has some pretty good storytelling. I will admit, I think the Pocahontas and John Smith relationship is very undercooked, but there's still some compelling storytelling in it with some resonant themes. And I still think it's a good movie, all things considered.
Yeah, definitely. It came out during that Disney Renaissance period where Disney was just cranking out nothing but hits. So I feel like it gets a little bit of a pass.
Yeah.
It's definitely among the lesser of the Renaissance films.
Yeah. I think Rachel shared this story on her Disney podcast quite a few times. But what's crazy is The Lion King and Pocahontas were made at the same time. And a lot of the top Disney animators and even Jeffrey Katzenberg thought Pocahontas was going to be the bigger hit. They thought it was going to be like their next Beauty and the Beast that would get like all the Oscar nominations and stuff. And so a lot more of the top animators went to work on Pocahontas, and the lesser animators worked on The Lion King because a lot of those people thought The Lion King was just going to be more of a silly, lighthearted romp. Well, Disney was proven wrong. The Lion King was the bigger hit.
That's for sure, and it's way more celebrated to this day. So yeah, look who won the pony on that one. But number nine, Oliver and Company, rating 6.6 out of 10. While the film has some good music and a good design for New York City, it doesn't offer anything new to this classic tale and underutilizes the animal characters. I have not seen this one. Jacob, I believe you have. Are they right or
I
wrong on this one?
I have seen Oliver and Company. Uh it's not one of my favorite Disney movies, but I still think it's all right. It's got pretty good animation, some really good songs, pretty good people involved in the soundtrack too. You got like Huey Lewis, Billy Joel, Bette Midler. Billy Joel's song, especially "Why Should I Worry," is an absolute bop, and it's one of my favorite Disney songs. As far as adapting the Oliver Twist story, I do like the New York setting, and I thought Disney did a decent job with it in general. But what hurts it is I think Oliver, especially who's a cat, gets sidelined in favor of the other animal characters who are more memorable and they're a lot flashier, which takes away some of the heart of the movie. And the villain is pretty lame. Like this version of Sykes is not really that interesting, with the exception of the way his character gets killed off. It's pretty brutal. But aside from that, I don't really care for the villain in this movie that much. It's still a decent movie, but it's definitely far from top tier. But at least it was. I would consider Oliver and Company kind of like the gateway, though, kind of the building blocks for the Renaissance. Disney was having ideas with story and music on what they would do, and they would later pay it off in the Renaissance era. So,
Yeah, not to mention one more fact. This movie came out, I believe, around the same time or the same weekend as a little movie called The Land Before Time,
yeah,
which was from Don Bluth, who had left the studio and was like, I'm just going to create stuff on my own. And it worked for a while at least.
yeah, especially in the '80s. And if I had to say which one's better, I'd say The Land Before Time is better. It felt more like a classic Disney film than Oliver and Company did.
Yeah, and you say that the Oliver character is sidelined, and like, yeah, that's a wise choice. Yeah, sideline Oliver, who is the only name on the marquee. Like, smart move, Disney. That's some real smooth brain stuff right there.
Yeah, it was definitely a weird choice.
Weird old
But
flex.
I guess Disney couldn't get enough of Billy Joel singing dog and Cheech Marin as a talking chihuahua.
I mean, Billy Joel is awesome, so
Yeah,
maybe they were on to something.
yeah. I mean, those characters are fun, but the movie loses some heart when Oliver feels like a throwaway character.
Well, let's move on to number eight, Dinosaur from the year 2000. The opening scene of Aladar's egg traveling across the landscape was used as the film's trailer, and had the rest been as majestic, it would be remembered better. I have not seen this one, Jacob. You have, so are they right or wrong?
Yeah, I don't care for this movie. It's in my bottom three from Disney Animation. I don't think it's a garbage movie. The movie at least tried to be visually ambitious because it's CG animation, but for the most part, they use live action backgrounds. And for the most part, it's blended seamlessly. There's sometimes where that look is not aged all that well, but for the most part, visually, this movie is spectacular. The opening sequence is easily the best part of the movie, where there's no dialogue. It's just visual storytelling and music. And the James Newton Howard score is absolutely amazing. Like the visuals and the score are honestly the two best parts of the movie. But then everything else around the movie falls flat. Like the characters are uninteresting. The storytelling is very generic. It's like The Land Before Time, but just not near as compelling. And I think having the dinosaurs talk was probably the worst mistake that was made because I think the movie would have been more ambitious if it relied more on the visuals to tell its story. And the characters, like I said, were not really all that interesting. Like the lead character is very bland. The villain is pretty lame, and just there's some annoying side characters along the way, like these talking lemurs that guide the dinosaur characters. It's definitely one of the lesser Disney films. I think it's more boring, in my opinion, than it is bad, but I still don't think it's a good movie.
I remember seeing the DVD slash Blu-ray case so many times that I've seen that more than the movie itself. I know that sounds odd, but there you go.
Yeah. Honestly, you can just watch the teaser trailer for this movie and you've seen the best part.
All right, well, let's move on to number seven, and this is one that I actually have seen, The Three Caballeros from 1944. Let's see. The Three Caballeros is a mixed bag when it comes to content. It's one of the first movies that merged live action and animation poorly, and many of the shorts are fun, particularly near the beginning. However, the film overstays its welcome, yeah, and quickly loses focus of its story. What story? With the third act divulging into Donald trying to make out with human women and a strange sequence involving dancing cacti. Yeah, this whole little snippet is spot on right there. I do not care for the Three Caballeros in the slightest, Jacob, right or wrong.
Yeah, I would agree on this one. I'm not a fan of Three Caballeros either. I give the movie some credit. Like I do like the animation, even the it being the first to blend animation and live action. Other movies did it better, but you got to at least give this movie credit for its technological innovations, and I respect it for that. And obviously, the pairing of the Caballeros is fun, and I like the title song. But yeah, the movie doesn't really have an interesting story. It's just weirdly put together short films, a really odd framing device putting it together, and then the movie goes really bonkers in the end and not in the best ways. And Donald Duck lusting after human women is one of the creepiest things in a Disney movie.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate to give as much context as possible. This was released in 1944. World War II was still very much going on, even though Axis powers were on the back foot and we were winning. So there is that. However, all the animators were in the war, so Disney pretty much had to make do with what they had. They had to make gourmet dinners out of ramen noodles and salt. So for like throughout the 40s, they released Three Caballeros, Make My Music, Melody Time, Fun and Fancy Free. These basically clip show movies, but that's all that they could do. I'm not a fan of these movies, but I also am understanding of the situation that Disney must have been in. Just Walt Disney just crapping himself, being like, oh my God, all my animators are fighting the Japanese and the Germans. So it just, they did the best with what they had, but what they had wasn't great. So it's an admirable effort. But yeah, especially the Donald Duck stuff, that has not aged the best, especially animated Donald Duck dancing with a woman who's clearly on a blue screen behind him. And it's blatantly obvious, especially like you watch it on Disney Plus. It ages like milk in the Orlando sun.
Yeah, this is I mean there are fans of this movie. I've seen some people say it's underrated, but more power to them, but I don't really care for this one. If I had to choose between the Latin American themed package films, even though it's short and it's weird that they call it a feature length film because it's only 40 minutes. I'd rather watch Saludos Amigos over this.
Yeah, that was a lot more fun, I will give you that. But moving on to number six, an extremely goofy movie, again from the year 2000. I guess Disney was just having a rough year in the new millennium. But an extremely goofy movie is the Disney sequel to 1995's A Goofy Movie. It has received generally positive reviews from critics and viewers and is regarded as fun. However, it's also been widely criticized for not being as powerful as the original Goofy movie. Okay. And it did not live up to the characters and the franchise's potential. I have not seen an extremely goofy movie, Jacob. Have you? Are they wrong?
I have seen an extremely goofy movie. Uh, it's not near as good as the original Goofy movie, but there are some parts in the sequel that are almost as good as the first one. The story follows Max going to college, and Goofy has empty nest syndrome. And because he misses his son too much, he kind of loses focus and he loses his job. And because he didn't finish college in the first place, he has to go back to college to get a degree. And he ends up going to the same college as Max, much to the embarrassment of his son. And so you have the father son stuff again. I actually prefer the Goofy storyline more than the Max storyline because you got Goofy trying to get over the empty nest syndrome and realizing that there's always still going to be the father son dynamic, but it's a little bit differently now that Max is a grown man living his own life. And I do like the message of this movie. And there's a love story that comes into play with Goofy and a librarian. And I thought that was pretty well developed. The Max stuff I didn't care for as much because it's he suddenly has an obsession with sports. And so most of this movie is like a sports competition movie. And this movie came out when Disney had just bought ESPN. And so half of this movie is just a really weird promo for ESPN. And it is so blatantly obvious that it took me out of the movie. And so I didn't think that stuff was near as compelling. When we're dealing with the father son relationship and Goofy, there's some good stuff in it. But the movie has a couple story missteps that knock it down a few pegs. But as far as direct to video sequels go, it's still one of the better ones.
Sounds harmless to me, like why it would be one of the worst, I refuse to guess. But
Yeah,
I'll
there's like I can name like 10 other Disney sequels that are worse than Extremely Goofy movie.
yeah, odd. Like IMDb is a fickle beast sometimes. But moving on to number five, this is a juicy one. The Black Cauldron from 1985. Uh, the scary animated Disney film was the movie that almost killed Disney animation in 1985. While it has gained some status as a cult classic, it suffers from an excessively dark tone, generic narrative, and an unfocused story due to the 12 minutes being cut from the final product. It was so bad that the Care Bears movie did better than it at the box office. Oof, that sounds rough. I haven't seen the movie cover to cover, but I have seen enough like what happened to Black Cauldron, like videos talking about it. It sounded like it sounded like just the roughest time to be a part of the production of this movie, Jacob. Have you seen it? Are they wrong?
I have seen the Black Cauldron. I have kind of conflicting thoughts on it because I agree with the criticisms of the movie. The movie is very unfocused. It is tonally uneven at times. You can tell the film was studio meddled. They cut like 12 minutes of this movie, and I don't know if we'll ever get the restored footage. I would love to see that 12 minutes of restored footage to see if it would have improved the movie or not. And there are some underdeveloped characters in this. But honestly, I consider The Black Cauldron more of a guilty pleasure because, as flawed as this movie is, I admire the risk Disney took with this movie. The movie, I enjoyed the animation style, has a really good score. The world building, although it could have been fleshed out more, I still thought was interesting. I love the Horn King as a villain. The design is one of the more intense designs in a Disney film, and he's voiced by John Hurt. And John Hurt did the best he could with the material he was given. And I think the movie still has some high entertainment value to it, even if the movie's not great. And honestly, even though I'm tired of the Disney live action remakes, I've always stressed that The Black Cauldron should be the movie Disney should have adapted into live action more than half of the movies they ended up greenlighting.
A premise like this demands a live action remake. Like it demands it. I'm kind of shocked it's taken this long, but I mean, the movie didn't do so hot at the box office, so that's probably the reason why. But with John Hurt, rest in peace. I mean, the dude, like it's hard to screw up with John Hurt. Like you cast him in anything, I will stop and watch it. Like he was just in a movie I watched in my 2010 watch along called 44-inch Chest. It's a bad movie about like men and about men doing bad things to a guy who's cheating on one of their friend groups' wives, and John Hurt is pretty much like he's a sexist. Like he hates pretty much every woman. But he was charismatic enough to where it was he's at least interesting. So it's hard to screw up with John Hurt. But yeah, Black Cauldron, so weird beast. I will watch it one day. It is on Disney Plus, which has finally been added on there. But number 4, and I think we both can universally agree this is definitely one of the worst things Disney has ever done. Chicken Little. This movie is trash, plain and simple. Chicken Little is perhaps Disney's most mean-spirited film to date, and still rightly considered among the worst Disney films of all time. Yeah, I don't know what Disney was thinking on the day they greenlit this, or what the animators were going through at this time, but I hope they got counseling for this, because it's very obvious some of them needed it. Because Great Caesar's Ghost, this movie is just a tough watch.
You know what's more sad? The film was greenlit as a different movie. The director, when he was assigned Chicken Little, he originally meant it to be a touching story between a father and a daughter. Chicken Little was going to be a girl originally, and I think she was going to be at a summer camp, and I think it would have been a lot more straightforward and more heartwarming. But Disney was competing against DreamWorks, and Michael Eisner wanted Chicken Little to be edgy. So he changed the gender of Chicken Little and completely sabotaged the film to where it's like, you got to have pop culture references. You got to have mean spirited jokes. You got to make it CG animated. You got to make it look as DreamWorksy as possible. And it backfired miserably. I The jokes don't land. The pop culture references have aged like expired milk, and not in the best way. The Even the characters are written horribly. Buck Cluck is like the worst dad in a Disney movie. Like even when he makes things right with his son, it is not earned because you don't have any scene where you see any genuine care between the father and son, and so it always felt phony to me. And even the messaging of the movie is weird and how they do it. And I this movie has rubbed me off the wrong way. The animation has held up poorly. I think of If we're just talking about like the Disney canon, like the ones that were theatrically released by Disney, this is their worst film. There's maybe some direct to video sequels that are worse, but man, I can't stand this movie. I can't believe I used to like it when I was a kid.
Yeah, this movie is terrible, and I mean, yeah, I think we can undisputedly say that is IMDb got it right on this one. But moving on to number three, Strange World from last year at a 5.7 out of 10. Chicken Little was at 5.7 as well. Seems a bit harsh. I have actually not seen the movie. It came out during that late stretch of 2022 where I was just trying to see everything, and so many films of quality were coming out that I was just like, I had to make a lot of tough choices. I believe in that era, like Babylon, Fablemans, Banshees of Inisherin, Puss in Boots, and Fire of Love all came out in the same time. I'm like, I am losing my mind. I need to make a choice. And Small World was on the chopping block. But Jacob, have you seen this one?
I have seen Strange World. It's not worse than Chicken Little. I disagree with that placement, but I still don't think it's that good of a movie. At least it's well animated. I'll have to give Strange World that. Like, I enjoyed the animation style, and I liked about 2/3 of this movie. Uh, Doing like this Jules Verne type story about this family of explorers chartering this strange new world and exploring interesting creatures and life forms. There's some fun sequences in there, but the family dynamic, the characters are just caricatures, and they all got annoying after a while. Disney was trying to pull on the what they've been calling it, the generational trauma trope that had been done in other movies around this time. And whereas it worked in other movies like Encanto and Turning Red, here it just felt very uninspired by this point. And I hope that doesn't become the next trend Disney doesn't overuse in our next generation of films, like the twist villain trope, which people got tired of. What hurts this movie? The twist ending where we find out what the strange world is. It's a completely out of left field twist that completely derailed the movie for me, and it left a sour taste in my mouth, and it led to a very heavy-handed message that I felt like the movie didn't need, and nor was it earned. So it swung for the fences, but it was a huge miss, and I think the movie's in my bottom five as far as the main line Disney canon films. That twist left a sour taste in my mouth.
That movie, I believe, lost $100 million. Like
Yeah,
it,
it flopped pretty bad. Like, the film was hardly marketed, and I don't think the studio had much faith in the film.
It came out around Thanksgiving, which Disney usually owns that slot. I mean, Frozen came out around that time, Tangled came out around that time. So it's usually a very profitable spot for them. But no, not this time around. I mean, I will see it eventually. I mean, for a trivia league I'm a part of, I'm kind of gonna have to watch it. But yeah, at the same time, I just completely missed it. But coming in at number two is technically a movie, but it's kind of not. It's Olaf's Frozen Adventure. So this movie calling this a movie is a bit odd, but it's nonetheless annoying. My experience with this movie grated me so much. It was around the time of Thanksgiving 2017. Coco, the Pixar movie had come out. It was coming out Thanksgiving weekend. And so I used to work in my local theater. It came out Tuesday evening because it was technically coming out Thursday, but Tuesday evening it was it was coming out then. And so as soon as I got off of work, because I was on the day shift, I from I believe it was noon to 6 or 7, or was like 11 to 7. It was in that ballpark. But I got the late showing to Coco, and I'm like, all right, I am this is working out perfectly. 15 minutes of trailers pass by, or no, wait, it was 20 minutes. Then 20 minutes of trailers pass. I'm like, movie starting. And then Olaf's Frozen Adventure. And it lasted 20 human minutes in which I wanted to walk off the space, or walk off the earth into space. I hate this movie with every fiber of my being, how cloying and annoying that it is. But Jacob, do you like this one? There is no judgment, but there is a correct answer.
I don't get near as much as you. Uh, it is weird that they put this in front of Coco. I will agree with that. I think it was originally conceived as a TV special, but I think they put it in theaters to, I guess, get allow more people to see it. But I don't know why they did it in front of Coco of all movies. I just thought that was a weird choice. But
Why not do a Pixar short? That's the tradition. And
yeah,
Pixar shorts
yeah,
last
yeah.
usually 5 minutes. It's lasted as far as Elemental earlier this
Well,
year. We got the
what
Carl's Date one.
well, you got to remember they shorts in the 60s and 70s used to be some of their shorts during that like 60s and 70s used to be around the length of Olaf's Frozen Adventure. So I took it as Disney trying to bring back an old trend, like the Winnie the Pooh shorts before they formed the Winnie the Pooh movie. They were released as individual shorts, released in front of movies. And I think the Mickey Mouse Princess and the Pauper was about 20-25 minutes, and it was released in theaters in front of the Rescuers Down Under. So this is something Disney had done in the past. But I think because they hadn't done it in a while, the newer generation wasn't used to it and they got annoyed by it. So it backfired on them. But as for the quality itself, I didn't think it was that annoying. I'm a sucker for Christmas, and having that in the world of Frozen, I thought was nice. I mean, it wasn't the like most amazing story by any means, but I still thought there was some heart to it, and the songs I thought were pretty decent. I liked it better than the Frozen Fever short, which was only 5 minutes, and that short annoyed me more with the snowman boogers or whatever that was. Olaf's Frozen Adventure at least had a story that was worth its runtime.
It is literally Olaf chasing after a fruitcake. And they somehow managed to draw that out to 20 minutes and to make it the most teeth grindingly annoying thing that Disney has produced in quite some time. I'm not against Disney producing shorts or releasing them in front of their movies. That's totally fine. And I am not against anything Frozen. I actually quite like both the Frozen movies. I think that they both are very good. This broke me on Frozen for a while, so much so that I was considering not even going to see Frozen 2. I had that much PTSD. I ended up going, and I actually like parts of it more than the original, but we can have that discussion at a later date. But yeah, this movie's awful. So yeah, definitely among the worst in terms of annoyance. In terms of quality, that's debatable. But coming in at number one, Home on the Range from 2004 at 5.4 out of 10. So compared to the other 90s animated films, Home on the Range comes ahead thanks to beautiful animation and the occasional good song. When compared to Disney, however, it's a travesty with flat characters, too many cow jokes, and a story that is trying to be a grand western but is held back by Disney executives. The studio wouldn't release another 2D animated film until The Princess and the Frog, which, if my math is right, is 4 years later. Home on the Range came out in 2005. Princess and the Frog came out in 2009, so 4 years, which has given this film its reputation as the death of traditional animation and the worst Disney movie ever made. So, Jacob, are they right or wrong?
Um, I think Chicken Little is far worse. I
Oh,
I Home on the Range, I have never hated that movie. And that's one of my hot takes. Is it a great movie? No. Is it more geared for kids? Yeah. And the slapstick doesn't always land, and some of the jokes can be annoying, but there's still some effort put into it. I do like the voice cast that they were able to get in this movie. Some of them were weird choices, though, like Roseanne Barr as the cow, but I still thought she was funny. And you got Judy Dench and Jennifer Tilly, and I like some of the other supporting players in the movie. Randy Quaid is the villain. You got Cuba Gooding Jr., Steve Buscemi of all people. So the voice cast lands. I like the 2D animation. The songs I thought were decent. No, it's not up to the high standards of Disney, but it made me laugh. I still think the film is funny throughout. Not all the humor lands. There's like way too many cow jokes, like the synopsis says, but there's still some good stuff in there. and I still get some enjoyment out of the film, even if it's not among the high level of quality that Disney's put out over the years. Saying it's worse than Chicken Little, I just do not understand that, because Chicken Little's painfully unfunny. Home on the Range is mildly funny, but that's just me.
Yeah, I've actually never seen this one cover to cover. I've heard nothing but bad things, so I know I'm gonna have to watch it eventually, but even still, like I've heard nothing but bad things. But I pass it off to all of you. What is the worst movie from Disney, from mainline animated canon Disney you've ever seen? Not talking live action or anything. Like mainline from Snow White up to Strange World. What is the least what's the worst of the worst for you? Let us know in the comments. Love to read what you have to say. And Jacob, it's a privilege to do this with you every week. We will be live next week for the September monthly preview and wrapping up the Iron Fist coverage. So it's going to be a lot of fun next week. But Jacob, tell the people where they can find you.
They can find me on Letterboxd, Twitter, and Facebook, and you can, of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Even though I took a break last week, I will be back with content this week. At the time of recording this video, I just finally dropped my review of Extraction. I might have talked about that last week, so I got it up. I'll be doing Extraction 2. And as a plug-in, this Thursday night on my channel, which is tomorrow night when this video drops, we will be doing the next Discussing DreamWorks episode, where me and Ryan will be discussing the final collaboration with DreamWorks and Aardman, Flushed Away. I'm excited to rewatch the film again and discuss with Ryan on another Discussing DreamWorks. That's going to be this Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yeah, definitely check that out. I always enjoy talking about DreamWorks with Jacob, especially Flushed Away. I have a lot of good memories of that. But let us know, comment section. Also stay tuned for Jacob's channel Thursday. I will be over there. And this coming Wednesday, back on this channel for I almost said Discussing DreamWorks, for Life in the Movies live, the September monthly preview. It's going to be great. But as for this channel, Small Talk episode 4 has dropped, where Jacob Collins, Matt Wyatt, and myself have reviewed season 1 episodes 10 through 12 of Smallville. It's an incredibly funny episode, and I recommend you all check that one out. And my road to Saw 10 continues with my thoughts on Saw 4, with Jacob Collins coming back on to talk about that. But as for this channel, if you like the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, click the bell to allow notifications, so when a new video drops, you'll be the first to know about it. For Jacob Martin, my name is Ryan Cam. We will see you in the next one. Y'all take care.